Well, Harold, you wrote on your blog, Letters from Texas, something that was headlined, "A Love Letter to Texas Women, in Politics for Grace Garcia." Who did Grace represent?
Grace perfectly exemplified this brand of Texas political women, not the elected ones, not the Ann Richards, not the Kay Bailey Hutchisons. I mean, they have their accolades, but at the staff level, at the nuts and bolts level, there have been legendary Texas women who aren't household names. It's Mary Beth Rogers, who was chief of staff for Ann Richards. It is Deirdre DeLisi, Ted's wife, who was chief of staff for Rick Perry. It's very, very important people who make the trains run on time and get people elected. And Grace was perhaps foremost among that class of women back when she started out in I guess in the mid '80s, and it took her to Washington.
And you met her 22 years ago, is that right?
Right, in 1992. We were both working on the very early stages of that upstart guy you've never heard of named Bill Clinton, who had the nerve to think he could be president. And I'm about half convinced that Bill Clinton wouldn't have been president but for the efforts of Grace Garcia. She went from there, she followed them to Washington, worked in the Clinton administration, and then more recently worked for Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in the State Department. I'm about half convinced that Hillary Clinton's tenure in the State Department would not have been seen as successful as it was but for her efforts. And she recently came back about a year and a couple of months ago to run Annie's List.
And she, of course, affected political fortunes of candidates that we see today, right?
Oh, absolutely. I have no idea how much the Clintons owe her, but they owe her a lot. She was instrumental in electing Gary Morrow to land commissioner back in the early mid '80s and in 1990. More recently at Annie's List, she had taken an already successful organization and she had very professionally poised it for even more success. And it is just a crying shame that this has happened, because I expect good results from that organization this November. They've got a slate of great women, and a lot of them are going to win.
Oh, she will be missed, and of course she had been on our show before and was all about talking about issues. So in her honor, let's talk at least about one issue while we have you here, and that deals with what's going on with the school finance court case, and that Greg Abbott wanted Judge Dietz to be recused. He's not going to recuse himself, but that may prolong the process. Your thoughts on what's happening?
You know, interesting strategy on the Attorney General's office part. I think this is a political strategy. I think it's clear to most watchers that the state's going to lose this suit. That public school financing is inequitable, and that is probably unconstitutional under the state constitution. I think what Greg Abbott is doing here is setting himself up to explain the loss. And when he loses this court case, which ruling is expected soon, I'll bet you $1 that within the hour he's got a release out saying this is the judge's fault. He was not impartial. And he doesn't have to take the blame for mishandling the case. The irony here is he wouldn't have to take the blame for mishandling the case anyway. This is not his public school finance policy. This is the legislature's policy. He's defending it, of course, and Wendy Davis will quite rightfully attack him for having to defend a terrible policy. But he inherited this from the legislature. And so I think this is his attempt to be able to blame it on a Democratic judge rather than a Republican legislature.
Okay.